Okay, so are we live now, Mary?
Yes, we are.
All right.
And I see lots of people are joining. We've got about 15 so far. So maybe we just
Okay.
give it a minute and give
Okay,
people a chance to get logged in.
that sounds good.
All right, I think it looks like it's slowed down, so we could probably get started whenever you all are ready.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for our November webinar for the American Planning Association, the St. Louis Metro section. This is coming to you from the Public Advocacy Committee. The goal of the SLMS Public Advocacy Committee is to increase the section's awareness of legislation, governmental positions, and court cases related to planning and economic development. So we're here today for a public policy and legislative update presented by Pat Kelly of the Municipal League of Metro St. Louis and Megan Warner of the Missouri Growth Association to learn more about the policy discussions that are happening at the state level and the issues they're working on that could impact local government, economic development, and planning in the St. Louis area. I'll introduce more about our speakers in just a minute, but first wanted to make a few section announcements. So we've got our second annual winter workshop coming up on Tuesday, December 10th from 12 p.m. to 6 p.m. at the Kirkwood Performing Arts Center. Doors will open at 11:30. And the winter workshop will include catered lunch and the annual section award ceremony, followed by 3 engaging educational CM credit sessions and the annual holiday party. We'll host the holiday party right there at the Kirkwood Performing Arts Center from 4:30 to 6 with hot appetizers, drinks, bar trivia, and exciting door prizes. You won't want to miss those door prizes. So please register by December 1st. We also have our board elections for the APA St. Louis Metro Section Board. They're open through Friday, November 22nd. Due to technical issues we experienced earlier in the year, the Missouri chapter and St. Louis Metro Section are redoing our board elections with all nominations remaining unchanged. To vote, you'll need to just enter your name and APA registered email address, and the online ballot can be accessed through an email you recently received from Ashwarya from the state chapter. We also have an announcement about the St. Louis County Comprehensive Plan open houses. So please join the St. Louis County for one of their family-friendly open houses for the STL County 2050 Comprehensive Plan. At the meetings, you'll learn more about the challenging issues identified by their citizen surveys involving housing affordability, sustainability, transportation, and more, and weigh in on potential solutions. There'll be 3 identical meetings to provide easy access for all county residents. Food, children's activities, and door prizes will also be offered. The first meeting is this evening from 4:30 to 7:30 at the Greensfelder Recreation Complex at 550 Wideman Road in Manchester, Missouri. Dinner will be provided. They'll have another open house tomorrow, Thursday, November 14th. 4:30 to 7:30 at the Pavilion at Lee May at 305 Gregg Road with dinner provided. And then one on Saturday, November 16th from 10 a.m. to 1 at 4575 Washington Street in Florissant with breakfast provided. And you can learn more at stlouiscounty2050.com. Finally, thank you to our 2024 sponsors for bringing this webinar and other events to us throughout the year. Thank you to CMT Engineers and Consultants, CBB Transportation Engineers and Planners, and the Lockmuller Group. So now to introduce our panel. First, we have Megan Warner from the Missouri Growth Association. The Missouri Growth Association is uniquely positioned as an advocate for an industry that impacts nearly every sector of Missouri's economy. MGA seeks to support Missouri as a solution state that strives to improve administrative transparency and consistency, establishing the perception that our state is open for business. The MGA knows that the competitiveness and economic strength of the state of Missouri will be hampered by the elimination of critical tax credit and economic development tools, but also recognizes the need for a fiscally responsible effort to simplify and modernize those existing programs in a manner that enhances their efficiency, efficacy, and return to taxpayers. Megan Warner, MGA's executive director, has over 2 decades of government relations experience. She has served as both campaign and official staff member for those in elected leadership, as well as a lobbyist for a variety of policy initiatives. MGA also engages a leading lobby team and has become a go-to for practical input on policy impact and strives to be a resource for community and elected leaders. We also have Pat Kelly from the Municipal League of Metro St. Louis. The Municipal League of Metro St. Louis is a nonprofit, nonpartisan voluntary association of cities, villages, and county governments dedicated to improving the quality of life for area residents. In addition to providing networking and professional development opportunities for local area municipal officials, during the legislative session, the Municipal League monitors important legislation, testifies on league priorities, and provides relevant updates to members. In recent years, the League has supported regional initiatives, including City Arch River, Great Rivers Greenway municipal parks, funding for regional mass transit, and constructions and upgrades for the countywide public safety communication system, early warning system, and 911 cell phone locator capability. Prior to his role as the executive director of the Municipal League, Mr. Kelly was vice president of business and community development for the then Eagle Bank and Trust, now Enterprise Bank. He has 22 years of experience in municipal government, having served 8 years as an alderman and 14 years as a mayor for the city of Brentwood. So we'll have Megan go first, but I'd like to give each of you about 15 to 20 minutes to share about your organization's work and to tell us more about the policy areas and issues you'll be working on in 2024, 2025 that could impact the work of our members in local government and economic development. Participants can enter questions into the chat throughout the presentation, and then we'll turn to that Q&A at the end after both of our presenters have gotten the chance to speak. And then please feel free to share about how individuals can get involved more and get engaged with these issue areas at the state level. So I will hand it off to you, Megan, whenever you're ready.
All right. Thank you so much. And thanks to everybody for joining and spending your, what could be, I guess, your lunch hour with us. For those of you, I'm looking down the list here. I see many MGA members already on the list of attendees here, but to give a quick overview of what the MGA is, how we got started, what our focuses are, and what we're looking to accomplish and be advocacy policy priorities for the coming year. So the MGA has been around since 1985. We formed here in the St. Louis County region when a industrial tax shifted from manufacturing to residential or to commercial property. Our property owners kind of woke up the next day and thought, what the heck happened? We had no idea this was coming. We're not going to let that happen again. So we started off as being really a kind of a reporting association, primarily with the mission to not get caught by surprise again. We have since grown to really be a proactive organization. We engage a full-time lobby team. I think one of the best in the Capitol. I think others might agree. It's Nexus Group. Brian Grace is our kind of lead lobbyist of that crew, but there's another 4 lobbying professionals that support his efforts. They are in the Capitol every day. We focus primarily on Jeff City and state politics and policy. We do get involved at the local level, St. Louis County and St. Louis City. from time to time. We do have good relationships kind of everywhere in all three of those sectors of government. So, but you'll see primarily what comes out of us is kind of more statewide policy. So we like to say that we support, to backstep, our general kind of, focus and membership is anybody that touches the commercial real estate industry. And if you think about it, the commercial real estate industry touches a lot of different sectors in the Missouri's economy. So we've got, the banks, the law firms, the engineering firms, the contractors, the, development folks who we really consider kind of our core group. The developers are the ones out there kind of taking the risk and that kind of thing to make these big projects kind of happen and these impactful projects happen. But there's a lot of people that support them industry-wise. So we have janitorial services, we've got interior design, engineers, we're kind of all over the board. So that's kind of who our membership is. That's kind of who we support. And we have really seen our advocacy focus go from maybe a pretty detailed, minute focus on a development tool to a larger economic development, policy advocacy. We know when the Missouri economy is growing, our members are working, it trickles down to all those that support the industry. And, we really truly believe that most economic development deals and most kind of job those projects that are bringing in jobs, I mean, they all kind of start with a real estate transaction. So that's kind of how we came to be. Our focuses, we've been around for a long time, and we really have been able to establish ourselves as a pretty lead top go-to to anything in the capital that impacts the industry. We don't like to be a group that is this is our policy, this is our way. We're typically a group of an organization that says, let's come to the table and figure it out together. So especially in this industry, especially in these times that we're in, back in the early 2000s, we were seeing all kinds of new incentive programs and investments to get jobs, deals done and opportunities, these economic toolbox that we always talk about. There were new things being added at the time. What we're seeing lately is a lot of stuff being questioned or retracted. And so a lot of what we've been doing in the last decade or so has been trying to maintain those tools that we've been given that we believe are impactful, trying to fine tune them in a way that really supports not only the industry and the development of the growth, the built infrastructure in our communities, but doing it in a way that really makes financial sense to the governments, and talking about different opportunities that we might have to do tweaks here and there, as we have learned as our members are working all over the nation. It's not just here in the state. And that's something that we take to heart, is that we're not competing anymore. St. Louis City, St. Louis County, Missouri, Illinois, it's kind of us and the world, really. And so being able to keep us on a level playing field with others seeking to invest and build projects and bring in economic development and jobs into areas that we are continued to be on that list of potential places to be. So that's kind of our grown focus from that 1985 tax that was shifted and hit everybody kind of on their bottom lines, property owners. And we do that, routinely, obviously, through the legislative session in Jeff City, January through May. We usually take the May period through the summer and into right now and work on our policy initiatives, do work groups. We meet a lot of times with people who maybe don't share the same enthusiasm for some of the tools that we believe really are critical in getting these jobs done. By nature, our membership are pretty creative thinkers. I think when you're an investor or a developer and you're sitting down trying to make a job or a project happen, it's all on the table, especially these days when financing and you know, some of the challenges that we face. Is really having the tools available to us is critical. And being a spot and being a community and you know, municipalities that offer those tools and have a robust kind of desire to invest and grow and bring new investment into their region. That's something that we're really keen on trying to preserve and grow from the MGA's perspective. So that's kind of our foundation. Right now we are in the planning period moving through to 2025. Obviously the election cycle was a big one for us. Had a little bit of a less of a, you know, wasn't a lot of anticipation in Missouri as there may have been in the rest of the country. We are pleased to be working with Governor Kehoe. We believe that he is going to be very receptive and a good partner as we try to move through these next few years to, you know, create opportunity and do what we can to make sure Missouri continues to be on that top tier list of places to invest from other companies and investors from outside the state and inside the state as well. We obviously see the House and the Senate retaining supermajorities, Republicans in the House and the Senate retaining supermajorities. We know that the policy there and you know, some of the priorities haven't shifted a ton, but we know that there have been some change in personalities that we're going to be navigating. You know, there's always, I said something, we had a recent update with our lobby team last week about the election, and we were kind of talking about some of our supporters of our initiatives and some of our folks that maybe weren't quite so supportive of some of the things we were trying to work on, and how, you know, who was in and who was out and who retained their seat. And I think at the end of the day, there's always somebody that comes up, and there's always going to be those folks that need a little more education on the fine details or of how some of these programs work. And there's always going to be the skeptical folks that are concerned about investment of state dollar and return to the taxpayer. And we feel all of that is valid. And we welcome the conversations with anybody, you know, to try to learn and digest and try to figure out where there are places where we can meet and accomplish a goal. I think at the end of the day, we all kind of have the same goal. We all want to see Missouri be this vibrant, kind of healthy state that supports, you know, development and growth and job creation. And typically it's just figuring out a way that we can get there together is the focus. So we will continue to work on that with our elected leadership, and hopefully maybe not have to play quite so much defense this year on some of those tools that we really value. We do know that there has been a push of recent years to do some reforming to the like TIF programs or the TDD programs, CID programs. All of those things we really value as an organization. We will work to continue to try to preserve. We understand, you know, there are places potentially where they could become more effective or efficient as far as, you know, transparency and that kind of thing. And that's certainly something that, you know, we will continue to work with folks that have those concerns to try to remedy, so we can make sure we're keeping those tools in the toolbox. So let's see, what else do we have here? We've got a couple of more kind of municipal local things that we're working on that have kind of turned into state issues. MGA is a collaborative member of a group called Safer, Simpler Missouri. We started at Safer, Simpler St. Louis County, but where we are seeking to try to do some sort of uniformity, some sort of kind of minimum standard for any kind of code, you know, practices implemented in all of the different municipalities in the state. Right now, we do have legislation that's filed. We will be continuing to educate and work on that policy initiative. We know that that is a huge undertaking. We have 27 other organizations that have joined us in this effort, that have see the value in doing something that kind of makes the uncertainty a little bit more certain. We understand that going, that there's going to be variances in places. That's just kind of the nature of it. But trying to, come to some sort of baseline is the goal. So we at least know we're all kind of starting from a certain point. We have right now the policy that we have written, and Bill has made it a optional thing. So it's an opt-in opportunity. We have been going through different conversations and work groups and efforts to bring all the people to the table that we can and have dialogue about how something like this might be implemented, how it is managed. Obviously, something like this is the devil's in the details for certain, and we are not lost to that fact. We have been meeting with opposition over the interim between sessions. We've had some really great feedback and conversations with some of them and have really come up with maybe some potential creative solutions to their concerns. But over the next several weeks, we are holding work groups on some of these issues that we know are kind of the lightning rod issues, trying to figure out a way, is there an opportunity for some compromise? Is there some creative thought on how some of these concerns could be approached and remedied? But we have been doing this to get to even this date, or this far as where we are with this legislation. It's been I think this is our third year working on this now. We contracted with Development Strategies to do a broad kind of assessment of best practices approach across the nation. We've done a lot of research, put in a lot of investment and time, and we'll continue to do that as we know that this is a very complicated process. But our goal with that is to, try to eliminate as much uncertainty and as much confusion and as possible for those that are coming in and trying to implement and invest and manage something like that. So that's one big policy initiative that we're working on collaboratively with, like I said, 27 other organizations. Safer, Simpler Missouri, if you want to check it out, there's a website. You can put your information in, you can get updates. I encourage you, I know as a lot of folks on this call might be going, oh my gosh, what are they going to do? It's a little daunting, a little nerve-wracking. But please, please, please reach out to us. We want to talk. We want to make sure that we consider all sides of this issue as we move forward. So we welcome it. Okay, so that moving from that on to just kind of broader development policy in general. We are also part of a collaborative that is working specifically focused on St. Louis City right now on some of the development policies and moving forward, how we can really grow development and investment in that area. We will be hosting an event with the mayoral candidates here coming up in February. If anybody's interested in learning more about that group and some of the policy initiatives and kind of focuses we're going to be working towards, please reach out to me. We're happy to get you plugged in. But that'll be coming up in February. We do a lot of that kind of collaborative work. We're also actually in December, we are part of another kind of collaborative event with the AGC of Missouri, where we are meeting with the St. Louis Economic Development Partnership to talk about some of the different funding programs that they have available, here locally, and also, what their accomplishments and their mission and their policy projects and focuses are going to be moving through to the next year. So there's a lot of collaborative kind of dialogue that happens between us, membership, and leadership in the community and both economic development side of things and the policy side of things. So if there's anything that is interest to you at all, that you're working on, or that maybe that you have a program, and we do this a lot, we see this a lot, a program in another state, maybe that's like, man, if we only had this in Missouri, or if we only had this tool that we could be using, please, please, please reach out to us. That's kind of why we're here. We've got great professionals that are really, I like to say, they're not just out there to create policy that is advantageous for their specific need. They really are, the folks we have in leadership really are good public policy people. And so there's been several times where we know that, there are compromises made for the greater good, because that's the right thing to do and the right way to create policy. So that's always kind of been our foundation, and that's how we will continue to navigate whatever comes our way this session. But we are encouraged and hopeful that the dialogue will continue to be positive, or at least through the first session. Pat and I were talking a little bit before everybody joined that we always start off so optimistic. And so hopefully we can maintain that optimism a little bit this session as we kind of all roll off this election cycle, and hopefully do it with productivity and not so much political posturing as we'd seen maybe in the past couple cycles. Let's see, what else do I have here on my list? Oh, another big issue for us moving into the next year is going to be property assessment. We are working St. Louis County specifically on some property assessments for commercial real estate, trying to restore a little bit of confidence in that process. Talking with the assessor's office, we've had meetings all this year, ramped them back up this fall to talk about what kind of information, what kind of data they're using to set their assessments, what kind of cap rates they're using, how they're, with the input that they are putting in to produce the output of whatever number comes out here a little bit later this spring. So that's something that we work on continually. It seems like every few years when that cycle comes up and around. So it's our year to be working on that with them as well. So if anybody has any specific concerns or issues or examples of assessment practices, please also reach out to me. Let's see. Trying to think, assessment. We work very closely with departments of interest for our membership, and specifically Department of Economic Development at the state level. Got great relationships there. We really find that a lot of what we can manipulate, for lack of a better word, or advocate for, often comes into just the way some things are administrated, and the administrative side of things and how that's handled. So we really do value those relationships at those types of agency levels, and we'll continue to have that dialogue. And specifically like the historic tax credit program, we're very involved in the implementation of that kind of thing. And hopefully we'll continue to do so even through, the new governor assuming his position. We don't anticipate there being any kind of big changes in that department to date. So look forward to continuing to work with the folks over there, even in the change of leadership at the governor's office. Let's see, I feel like I've just been talking. So I don't know, with that, I'll kind of come to a conclusion here and turn it over to whoever wants to go next. I'm sure there'll be some questions to be answered.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and we can get to questions at the end, but I think we'll just hand it over to Pat to share about the Municipal League of Metro St. Louis.
Great. Thanks, Danny. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I think the last time I spoke before your organization, it was a debate on Better Together. So it's a much of a better atmosphere today. So But the Municipal League gave a little background on it. We have been around. We had our 100-year anniversary in 2017, and I like to remind the State League we're actually about 20 years older than the State League. And like the Missouri Growth Association, we really the league was first formed by 9 of the municipalities in St. Louis County because they felt like they weren't getting enough representation in Jefferson City, specifically related to utility increases in St. Louis County. And so 9 of the cities got together. I might not get them all right, but it was Ferguson, Kirkwood, University City, Clayton, Maplewood. I know I'm missing a few, Florissant. But really to fight an initiative by Laclede Gas then for a tax increase. So they formed the Municipal League and actually originally Association of Cities of St. Louis County, and they defeated that initiative by Laclede Gas at that time. So we've been around again for over 100 years. We represent 84 of the 87 municipalities in St. Louis County. St. Louis City is a member and St. Louis County is a member of our organization. Our bylaws restrict us to those boundaries. So every year we have a legislative affairs committee. They start to meet usually around the middle of August. We meet 4 or 5 times. Debating and going over past legislation and what we think the next session is going to bring us. And we try to put together what we call our legislative priorities and our policy statement. Our policy statement is a kind of a broad approach to how we're going to work in the legislature. It gives myself as a registered lobbyist the ability to be flexible when legislation is presented that we're either going to support or work against. But the primary focus is really our legislative priorities. And usually we try to develop 5 or 6 pieces of legislation or issues that we're going to, again, either work for or against that we are concerned are going to come up in the next legislative session. So we present that report to our membership in October. It was approved by our membership just 3 weeks ago, and it'll be our tool as we enter the session next year. So I'm going to go over our 6 priorities for this year, and then some of the other things we think will be happening at the Capitol in this upcoming session. So the first one is preservation and expansion of municipal revenues. We've seen over the last couple of years continued attacks on revenue sources for municipalities. And I'm sure almost everyone is aware of the I think there were 5 bills filed last year that wanted to eliminate the sales tax on groceries in the state of Missouri. That it sounds great. It would be great, except they don't have a way to make up for that lost revenue. That the fiscal note on that was $1.3 billion to local government. For most municipalities in St. Louis County, it was upwards of 25% of their annual revenue, and with no means to make up for that lost revenue. And there's other instances of that as well. 2 years ago, there were 65 bills filed that would have reduced municipal revenues in the state of Missouri. So that's always a top priority of ours. And we'll continue to fight that battle. We're pretty confident that legislation will be back again this year. Another issue that really we find, or I think you're lucky, Megan will probably agree with me, if you have a piece of legislation, you're lucky if you can get it to pass in 3 years. So one we've been working on for a couple of years is juvenile justice reform. And what we learned over the last 4 or 5 years is that the Supreme Court had issued a rule in 2012 called Rule 28 that requires when a juvenile is brought to the detention center, has been apprehended by the police. They use a scoring system for evaluating whether that juvenile should be held over to go before the judge the next day. And but the rule allows for the juvenile detention director to decide how he's going to apply the rule. So in some cities or some jurisdictions, if a juvenile is brought in with 3 pending charges, they use all of those charges in order to score them whether they should be held over. But in some jurisdictions, like St. Louis County, they only use the most egregious. So what happens is you have to have 15 points to be held over to go before a judge, and yet a felony is 12 points, a potential felony. So many times what our local police departments, St. Louis County and municipal police departments, they were estimating that only about 25% of the juveniles that they were taken to the detention center were actually held over to go before a judge to decide what kind of services those individuals would need. So we've had legislation in the last several years that basically says that when applying Rule 28, they have to use any pending charges when they're using the scoring system. So we think it's very important. 4 years ago, St. Charles County went to kind of a no tolerance. Their juvenile detention center said they were going to use the entire score when evaluating the juveniles. In the first year that they were doing that, they reduced their stolen car rate by almost 60%, because they were holding them over, they're going before a judge, and those individuals were really getting the services that they want. This isn't designed to put kids in jail and throw away the key. It's really to make sure that kids get the deterrence they need to stay away from a life of crime, basically. So that's a key priority for us again this year. We've had it in several bills over the last couple of years. One got to the governor's desk, a crime bill was in it, but he vetoed that bill for other reasons, not because of that. The other one, another one is the maintaining of local elections. There have been several bills the last couple of years that were trying to eliminate the April elections and wanted to move all of the April local elections to November. Not only do we believe that that's a logistics problem in St. Louis County, you can imagine if all the municipal elections were on the ballot a couple of weeks ago, or I'm sorry, just a week ago, in addition to all of the general election ballot initiatives. So we will continue to work against that type of legislation. Another one that I think will interest your organization is the last couple of years, there have been bills that have been filed that would require that if a municipality or the county or MoDOT are doing a project in the right-of-way, which would be most of their projects, and it called for the relocation of fiber optic lines, that the political subdivision would have to pay for those relocations. That would be a huge burden on local government, just from a funding standpoint, to take on that burden. We believe it's unconstitutional, which is a lot of the legislation that's proposed at the Capitol, because you'd be using public funds for a private purpose. There's a couple of other reasons as well. But we know that legislation is coming back again next year. We will, try to explain to the legislatures, as Megan had mentioned, one of our primary functions in Jeff City is really educating the legislators. Unfortunately, most of them didn't come from local government. They don't have any idea how municipal governments or county governments are run. And that kind of creates a conflict on a lot of issues. The other item we've been working on for a couple of years is some sunshine law reform. Specifically dealing with records held by municipalities for minors. A lot of our parks departments hold contact information, email lists that contains emails for minors, whether they're on a baseball team or it could even be a part-time employee over the summer. And currently, all of that information is sunshineable under our current laws. So we've had legislation, again, this will probably be going on our 4th year. We had this bill actually passed as well a few years ago, but again, it got vetoed by the governor because of some other items that were in there. One that we added this year is legislation to at least dealing with the video lottery games. I know City of Crestwood has an issue with that, but really our position is we don't care whether they're legal or not. We just want them, if they're not legal, then we want a mechanism for removing them from the facilities. And if they are legal, we want them to be regulated and have a fee associated with them, so that we can, have the resources in order to make sure that they're being handled properly. And then, so that's really all of our legislative priorities for this year. A couple other, we are always working on legislation that deals with economic development. We like the Missouri Growth Association, believe that those are vital tools for the economic viability of all of our communities. Last year there was legislation, well, again, almost every year there's legislation, but last year there's several bills that would have required the passage of a TDD or a CID or a NID. Would require a unanimous vote of the Board of Aldermen before they could establish a special taxing district. We got it down to a 2/3 majority, at least in the bill language. But we would, oppose that legislation as it's been filed the last couple of years. Another one we've been working on to try to fix, we think we'll have a pretty good chance next year, is the legislation that was passed a few years ago dealing with home-based businesses, which basically requires no impact businesses don't even have to report to the city that they're operating out of their homes. We think there's a real conflict there. It creates just a bad situation between neighbors and the community, because why is somebody running a business in their house and the city's not doing anything about it, and we don't have the tools to fight that. So we are, now that Representative Lovasco didn't get reelected or didn't win his primary, he was the primary source that fought us from fixing that after he got the bill passed a couple of years ago. So without him at the Capitol this year, we're hoping that we'll have a pretty good opportunity to fix that legislation, so that we get at least to have home-based businesses that are supposedly no impact, the ability to require them to register with the city, so that we know exactly what they're doing, and have some way of monitoring them as they operate their businesses in their house. So those are kind of some of the things that we're working on. Just a couple of other things that we were very active in the gas tax, both the ballot initiative that failed several years ago, and then getting the legislation passed for to increase the gas tax so that we could make some significant improvements to the state's infrastructure. We think that's very important to not only the St. Louis region, but the state as a whole. And we worked very closely with Governor Kehoe. He led both of those initiatives. We are also, I think one of our biggest accomplishments several years ago was really working with the legislature and getting the passage of Wayfair. That was, there are a lot of groups working on that. We can't obviously take credit for that, but that was something that I know that both leagues, because we work very closely with the state league, we've been working on since the early 2000s. So the passage of Wayfair has really been great for the municipalities and just taxing districts as a whole. 52 of the municipalities in St. Louis County have passed the use tax. St. Louis County is going to put it on the ballot this year. Had a call with Sam Page today, and we're going to support that initiative from an educational standpoint to try to get that to pass for the counties. That's important for municipalities because they will still share in the 1 cent countywide sales tax, as well as the public safety sales tax. Unlike the pool tax, the 1 cent county tax, it's pool. Both of those taxes will be just distributed throughout St. Louis County on a per capita basis. So that would be a big shot in the arm for local government from a revenue standpoint. So those are some things we've worked on in the past and things we're going to continue to work on in the future. So I'll stop there, and I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
Sure. Well, I will start with just a few questions, and then if anyone from the audience would like to put anything forth, we'd be glad to give it to the speakers. This is kind of maybe a silly question, maybe an obvious question, but you said that there were 65 bills filed that would reduce municipal revenues and sources. Why do you think that is?
So I'll start, Megan, then maybe you can jump in if you have any. But
I think we got the same answer on this. Yeah.
There's just this attitude at the Capitol that one, that municipal and local government have too much money, and we've got excess money. I don't think the legislature realizes that 99% of the municipalities in St. Louis or in the state of Missouri operate on a balanced budget. They keep very little in reserves, and that they also don't understand that we're a service industry. As you know, as working for municipalities, we're providing service to the residents. So anywhere from 70–80% of municipal revenues go towards salaries and benefits, and the rest of it goes to infrastructure. And so are providing services like trash and parks. So and they don't understand that. They have this perception that we've just got money sitting in the bank and can have plenty of revenue to do whatever we want. So and they want to take credit for lowering taxes. A good example is the property tax freeze for seniors. I think you'll see that bill overturned once there's an affected party, which won't be until January 2025. But I'm sure that the fire districts and school districts will probably sue the state. The Constitution says that if the state abates any property taxes, that they have to reimburse those political subdivisions for that abated tax. So that the legislature circumvented that by giving the authority to the counties to abate those taxes, but the counties really don't have any authority to do that over political subdivisions below them, like the state legislature does. So there's going to be a number of challenges, but I think those are the kinds of things that it sounds good, but when they don't come up with a way to make up for that lost revenue, it just hurts those political subdivisions. So it's just this idea that people are taxed too much, and they want to take credit for reducing taxes.
Yeah, I mean, that's dead on. It's just a smaller government, less taxes mentality that we've seen in the Capitol for decades now. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. So I do feel like, the scrutiny and the education is a big part of what we do every day when we talk with our legislators.
Okay, thank you. And I also had a question. I've read that there was recently a legislation proposed about EV charging, that if a local government requires EV charging with any new developments, that the city would have to pay for that infrastructure added. Would you be able to speak on the status of that legislation?
So it didn't pass last year. I think that was specifically aimed at St. Louis County, unfortunately, because they had adopted a county ordinance that would require, under certain circumstances, well, I think even if as an example, if a shopping center was overlaying their parking lot, they would have been required to put in EV charging stations. And I think that was the extreme one way. And I think so then the legislation, when that got finally overturned or repealed, I guess, the legislature is going the other way and say, well, if you're going to require that, then you have to pay for it. So I think maybe, and Megan mentioned this before, there's ground to meet in the middle there. I think if it's new construction and they want to put in the conduit and those kinds of things for EV stations in the future, or if they want to put them in, they can. But with some of what I would say the rehab or maintenance on buildings and then requiring it would have been a huge burden to local businesses. So
Yeah, and I think it went as far, at least in the earlier renditions. I'm not sure when or if this got taken out at the end. It's been a couple years now that this bill in Jeff City has gone a fairly long way. I think that got pretty close to the finish line both in the last couple years. But there's provisions there that even if there's a tenant turnover and parking spaces got reassigned. I mean, there was a lot of ambiguity in how it was written and potential impact, unknown impact, and something that we always say for our membership is that uncertainty is the worst thing we can have when you are trying to balance that, ledger and trying to make a project work, getting hit with something that pops up that you're unaware of. It's a killer. And so that was part of our concern with that. But I do anticipate that we'll be having the similar discussions this session and moving into the next few, I'm sure. And something that we like to say too is that a lot of times when if you're a responsible developer and if you're developing and building to attract tenants and to attract services and businesses and stuff to come into the area, you're building and you're doing some of that with an eye towards the future anyway. So we are a big supporter of incentive and not mandate type of thing. So we like to make people aware that we're everybody out there that is trying to invest and help support the built environment in our communities, if they're doing it the right way, and most are, that they're doing this kind of thing anyway, because it is a market advantage in a lot of circumstances.
I just have one more question, and I don't know if I'll give the audience another chance to put forth a question, but my last question would be how can our audience get involved with your organizations, or just get involved with these policy areas and working with state legislatures?
Well,
ahead,
yeah, I mean, I'd encourage anybody participating. I mean, if you're listening to this call, you've got a vested interest in any of what we've been talking about today, reach out to the Missouri Growth Association. We do a lot of member briefings and engagements, and during the legislative session, we do reporting every week on what's happening. And we focus not only on what's happening specific to the commercial real estate industry each week, but we also include the broader snapshot of the activities in the Capitol, because I think that really offers a great perspective of what the priority is of the day. And I think it allows you to compare what is valued and what is not valued at the time by our legislators. So what is ranking as a priority 1, 2, and 3, and kind of where we fall maybe in that ranking. So please feel free to reach out to me, go to our website, send your little contact information in. Would love to have coffee or sit down and do whatever we can to get the people involved. We're always looking for different perspectives and different opinions at the table as far as we're concerned.
Yeah, and from the league's perspective, technically, for all those out there that are in St. Louis County, you are members of the league. Our membership isn't just for the elected officials; it's actually for all the municipal employees as well. And we hold monthly meetings the fourth Thursday of every month. We rotate that around St. Louis County at different host city every month. And we always have a short presentation of some topic of interest to the membership. So it's a great resource. You can also go to our website and sign up to receive our monthly newsletter, as well as our legislative updates. I should have mentioned that we like the Missouri Growth Association, we track that on a weekly basis. By the middle of the session, our we're probably tracking 500 plus bills. And we put that report out every Friday. And then we update the status of those bills every Friday, so you can see where they are in the process, whether they've had a hearing or scheduled for a hearing, those kinds of things. So I think that'd be a good resource. You would get that if you signed up, or you can always just go to our website and see those Friday reports that we put them on the website on late Friday afternoon every week. So yeah, in our office, we're always here to answer questions too. I know several, municipal employees, from planners to zoning administrators to, finance officers. They contact us all the time. So we're always here for a resource if anybody's looking for any information that you think we might have to help out your municipality.
And I will just follow up real quick with one
Yeah.
kind of plug and ask from our perspective. And I'm guessing Pat probably feels the same way, but a lot of what we try to do is educate. We reference that several times. It's a continuing cycle of new folks in and out in Jeff City, and all of them, as Pat mentioned, most of them did not come from this environment that we all inhabit. So if you're interested in politics, if you're interested in the process, if you're interested in the capital craziness, and you want to be that resource for us as we are a resource for them, and you want to get involved, please, reach out. We're always looking for good folks to be able to explain and educate how policy is impacting the practical implementation of that policy. And the EV stations is a great example. So if you'd like to get more involved as far as that goes professionally, I'm guessing both organizations would be happy to hear from you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and for meeting with us, and we really appreciate all the information and opportunities you shared with us. From the APA, just reminding everyone to register for our winter workshop. Mary, is there any other announcements I'm missing before we close out?
Nope, I think that's it. Thank you both so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good
Appreciate
day.
it. Thanks, Pat. Bye, Pat.
See ya.